Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rogan, and you are watching The Mysterious Stoner in a Bowler. Today, however, I am once again not smoking. Because I don't have any weed to smoke. And so, in order to put up with today's most interesting topic, I will be partaking in some Bacardi. In a beer glass, because, in case you haven't figured it out, this channel is a bit blasphemous, you might say. So, why not add to the blasphemy a little bit more by having some rum in a beer glass? The beer was really good, too. But that's been gone for a while. And so, before we continue, I will let you know, in case this is your first time being on this channel, that I am an ex-Christian, and what I do in this particular series is go through the Bible and talk about the good and the bad that are within the Bible. All while under the influence of alcohol, but usually weed. And today's particular subject is extremely mature. This is a mature channel, after all. I don't say that in nearly enough of my videos. I've said it, well, this might be the second or third time that I've ever actually stated it on my channel. Because I swear, and I don't have a problem with saying things pertaining to what I believe the way they are. And sometimes that's offensive, and sometimes people think only adults should be able to hear something of that nature. But honestly, maturity, you can't limit maturity to age. There are old people who act like children, and children who act more mature than some completely grown adults. So, you will have to be the judge of how mature you feel you are, or your offspring is, to watch this particular video. Because in this video, in this episode, we are coming across the next Bible story in chronological order. Yes, it is in a Bible story that we are going to cover the topic of masturbation. We're not talking exclusively about masturbation. The passage in this story we're covering just so happens to be the passage that Christians like to go to say that masturbation is evil. Now, if you want to know why an ex-Christian is talking about all this stuff about the Bible and all that, well, you can go watch all my other videos outside of this series, and you will come to find out why. My whole deconversion story, what I've been through. I was a missionary kid, and I've done missionary type work as an adult, not as a technical missionary, but I've done similar stuff. I've studied the Bible a fair bit growing up. My father went to seminary. He was a military chaplain for a good chunk of time. And so I'm just really familiar with this book. And my parents took this book very literally. And they were extremely conservative, evangelical, and some might even say a bit cultish in their style of beliefs and way of living. But I'm not here to talk about that. My parents were some of the types of Christians that believe that masturbation was wrong, so that just makes this episode all the more enjoyable for me. Without further ado, let's begin. If you've seen my previous episode, you will notice that it just so happened to be Judah, one of the 12 sons of Israel. Well, one of the 12 sons of Jacob. He goes by both Jacob and Israel. He is the same one who suggested selling his brother Joseph into slavery. to the Ishmaelites when they showed up, and is the one who wanted to make a profit out of their brother disappearing out of their lives because he was annoying them with their dreams and, well, with their father liking him way more than all the other brothers. Judah gets married. He has 3 sons by this woman. The name of the first was just E-R. That's kind of why I picked this accent, so I could pronounce this word or this name better. Or It's just E-R. How the hell do you pronounce that? I guess they were at a real shortage of words to figure out what to name him. But then the second son was named Onan. Maybe that's where they got Conan from. And then he had a third son named Sheila. Must have been a more masculine name back then. But, so he has these 3 sons, right? 2 older. Sheila is much younger. And the reason this is important, well, you'll find out. And so Judah, it's very customary for the father to choose brides for their sons. Even though that's, well, Jacob had 12 sons, so he probably couldn't be bothered to go out and find wives for all of them. So Judah was lucky enough to be able to go out and pick his own. Yay for Judah, I guess. I don't know. The traditions and exceptions and things they go back and forth on in this book are ridiculous. There's not a whole lot of consistency or explanations as to why a lot of things are done. We're just told, this is the way it is. Like, okay. It's stupid, but okay. Not very evolved, socially speaking. But Judah picks a wife for his firstborn son, And verse 7 of chapter 38, it says, "And Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him." That's all it says. We don't know what exactly did. That was so wicked that God just had to kill him. It doesn't say how God killed him. It doesn't say how. It doesn't say what exactly did. And you would think that if God cared about humans and his people and the other, even just the other brothers and Jacob, I mean, oh my gosh, go back and watch my video about the tragedy surrounding Dinah. And you'll find that really all the sons of Jacob, the vast majority of the sons of Jacob should have been killed by God for what they did and how overboard they went in enacting revenge on a bunch of innocent people and stealing a bunch of their stuff and their wives and their children. But I'm not going to get into that. You can go watch that video and hear all about it there. Point is, these brothers, including Judah, I mean, he's the one that suggested selling their own brother, Joseph, into slavery. I mean, the brothers are dicks. But for some reason, is so bad that we don't even get to hear what he did, and God just kills him. How do we know? Oh, the Lord works in mysterious ways. Yeah, put that up in a court of law and see how that goes. What did do that was so bad? We should know. We humans should be allowed to know in the Bible, if this book is so important for us to know everything, we should know what did so that we don't do the same thing. But we don't get that information from God or from anyone else in the Bible. Was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. End of story for no explanation, no defense given for him, no clue what it could have been. He may have not done anything wrong at all. He may have died from some sort of random disease or sickness, and people just said, oh, it was God because did this weird thing that we thought wasn't normal, or I don't know, maybe was like a really creative person or something, or maybe, and he did something to make people look down on him, and then he died and everyone blamed it on God. God didn't like it, so God killed him. That must be what happened, guys. Oh, but don't tell us what did so we can also avoid the wrath of God. Thanks, guys. Thanks, God. You're so informative and helpful in this situation. Sorry, I like to talk shit about Yahweh. Well, apparently, this was kind of a customary thing, what follows. Because in the very next verse, it says, and Judah, remember, he's the dad of and Onan and Shelah, he says to Onan, go in unto thy brother's wife and marry her, and raise up seed to thy brother. Apparently that's how they did things back then. If the oldest brother died and left his wife as a widow with no sons or anything, which is apparently what happened. Tamar had no children by Maybe he was asexual. Maybe that's what happened. And then he died in a freak accident. I don't fucking know. I need to stop dwelling on that and move on. So Onan is expected to go in, have sex with his brother's wife, make her pregnant, and then the children that come from Tamar, the wife of dead those children, and Onan is supposed to help raise these children. These children are going to inherit what was going to go to from Judah. And these children wouldn't really be counted as Onan's, from what I gather, from what I understand. Onan, however, was not a big fan of this tradition, and he didn't feel like having Tamar have his children and then those children not bear his name. Instead, they would be living more so in honor of They would be brought into existence for the sake of his older brother and not for him. That's my understanding anyways. And he wasn't cool with it, which is totally understandable. Like, why should Onan be expected to do this? If he doesn't want to, he shouldn't have to. But he's expected to. Onan knew, it says in verse 9, and Onan knew that the seed should not be his. And it came to pass, when he went in unto his brother's wife, that he spilled it on the ground, lest that he should give seed to his brother. Now, this is King James Version, the original King James Version. So in case you didn't understand that, basically what happened is that Onan went along with what he was told to do. He went in to Tamar. He went to have sex with her. He goes in, makes love, or whatever, fucks Tamar. And then pulls out and jerks off his seed onto the ground. And the very next verse says, and the thing which he did, the thing which Onan did, displeased the Lord, and therefore he slew him also. God didn't like what Onan did, and so he killed Onan. It just says he slew him also. It doesn't say how he died. It doesn't say how God killed him. It does not say that God killed him for masturbating, even. What it seems to insinuate is that God killed Onan for not making his brother's wife pregnant, for not coming inside of her. That's what you would think is what's being meant here. But Christians, humans who take this book far, far too seriously, like my parents and many others, not all of them, but many of them, decided that this verse meant that humans should never masturbate, and that you should only ever ejaculate inside your wife. If I were still a dead serious Christian going over this, like, I would, a lot of Christians would hate me. They're still going to hate me, but they would hate me as a Christian for pushing this, because this is the passage they use. This really is the only passage that talks about masturbation of any kind. And I'm telling you, Christians and some Catholics even, they take this, I would say they take it the whole 9 yards, or the full mile, kilometers, whatever. But there's nothing to take it out of from here. There's nothing in here that says that masturbation itself is bad, that touching the clitoris is bad, that whacking off is bad. Nothing says that here. In fact, science has proven that masturbation is good for you. Obviously not too much. Too much of a good thing is bad. Becomes bad. But here, it doesn't even say that. That is how ridiculous people have gotten with this book. And it's stupid. I felt so guilty for so long about masturbating, and I didn't even know what to make of it. My parents didn't even really have a good conversation with me about it. My dad attempted to have the talk about the birds and the bees with me, but it didn't go well, and I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. I'd already seen porn by then, and I think I had. Maybe I hadn't. Maybe I hadn't discovered porn yet. Well, I knew about it, but, I wasn't seeing, I hadn't seen any, and, purposely looked up any. So if that's correct, according to my memory, it's been a long time. He had that conversation with me when I was like 13 or 14 years old, and it was awkward as hell on the way home from somewhere. I think it was piano practice or something. It was a really weird time to be talking about it. And I wasn't even completely sure what he was talking about while listening to him. But the bits that I remember, he made sex sound so disgusting. We never talked about masturbation. Pretty sure. But my dad always wanted me to have my bedroom door open at all times of the day, so he could make sure I wasn't getting up to something, who knows what. Eventually I was, but it was porn and video games that I was shutting the door for. But I digress. Christians are fucking anal when it comes to masturbation. Most of them. Not all Christians have an issue with it. Some of them have a bit of common sense about it and know that there's nothing wrong with it, and that and they know that it's scientifically good for them. So, now that we've officially discussed masturbation and gotten it out of the way, let's continue with the story. After Onan dies, Judah says to Tamar, "Stay a widow, live here with us, we'll take care of you, and when my youngest son, Shelah, is older, he'll give you a son, when he's old enough." I don't know how old Shelah was. Maybe he was a kid. Maybe he wasn't far from puberty. I mean, they did consider boys of 13 to be adults back then, so he was probably younger than 13. Yeah, they had very different rules about things back then. He said, "Wait until my youngest son, Shelah, can give you a son." And so Tamar was like, "Okay, I'll do that." Apparently she wasn't too old herself. Maybe she was married super young, which was also a thing back then. So maybe she had some time on her vaginal clock, ovary clock. I'm not sure what the right term is. You know, their clock before women can no longer have children. She had time. She wasn't worried about it, clearly. And eventually Shelah gets old enough, or at least what Tamar considers to be old enough, and Judah doesn't tell Shelah to, get jiggy with it with Tamar. Tamar decides to take things into her own hands and get a son a different way. Since Shelah isn't going to be giving her a son, or at least that's what she seems to think, or maybe Judah hoped that she'd forget and he was gonna, try to marry Shelah off to someone else. I don't know. But apparently Shelah was expected to do the same thing, and Judah just never got around to ordering it to happen. So Tamar, apparently there were specific garments for being a widow that she was usually wearing since she was a widow. And Judah is going off somewhere on a journey. I'm not going to get into the details of it because it's trying to cut down on time. But Judah is going off to shear some sheep. For the reason it doesn't matter. It's more than just that, but that's part of what he's off to go do. He's taking a trip somewhere. And so Tamar changes her clothes. She gets out of her widow garment, and then she dresses like a harlot, whore. The word escapes me. But the Bible refers to the whores of those days as harlots. So she dresses as a harlot, she puts on a veil so that she can't be recognized, and then she intercepts Judah on his way to shear his sheep. And she's advertising herself out there. I guess she's got a tent or something, or I don't know what. But she's got a spot for whoring, and she's sitting there waiting for Judah to come along and then advertising herself. And Judah sees her, has no idea that it is his daughter-in-law. He sees her and he's like, "Ooh, hey, let's fuck." Basically, that's what he said. And she says, "Well, what are you going to give me in payment?" And he says, Well, I'm on my way to shear some shear some sheep, and I've got goats, and I'll send you a young goat from the flocks that I've got." And she says, "Okay, all right, fine, but I have to wait for that to come back. So for insurance, to guarantee that you're going to deliver on this, what are you going to give me? You gotta give me something that you're going to come back for." They call it a pledge here in the Bible, but it's like, what are you going to give me that's important to you that you're going to come back and get from me, and then give me the goat, and we'll be settled. What are you going to give me in the meantime? And so Judah gives her a ring he's got, a special ring, some bracelets that he's got, that he wears, and his walking staff. And she's like, "Okay, cool." And so they go in and they do it like they do on the Discovery Channel. And Judah continues on his merry way, and Tamar changes outfits back into her widow's clothes and goes back home where Judah came from. Judah sends one of his buddies, or one of his servants. It doesn't really clarify which it was, but he sends one of the people that kind of works with or for him to deliver the goat. And the guy gets there with the baby goat, and Tamar's gone. And Judah is like, "Well, shit. Well, I guess that stuff is gone. Fuck." And he continues on with his life. A few months later, pregnancy amount of months later, Tamar starts showing. She got pregnant, which was what she was trying to do. And she's pregnant by Judah. Of course, Judah doesn't know, because he didn't take the veil off, I guess. Never came off the whole time. I guess the veil stays on. But he calls her in. And this is real Christianity at work here. Because oh my God. He says, "It came to pass about 3 months after that it was told Judah, saying, Tamar, thy daughter-in-law, hath played the harlot, and also, behold, she is with child by whoredom." And then guess what Judah says? He says, "Bring her forth, and let her be burnt." Genesis chapter 38, verse 24, if you want to look it up. That is his reaction to his daughter-in-law being a whore. He has no problem fucking a whore. He just doesn't want one of his relatives being a whore and thinks they should be burned for having a child through whoredom. The hypocrisy is strong with this bastard on this one. A lot of things happen like this in church too. But Tamar played it smart from the beginning, because it seems like she knew this was going to happen. And she sent to her father-in-law, to Judah, saying, "By the man whose these are, am I with child?" And she said, "Discern, I pray thee, whose are these? The signet," the ring, "and the bracelets and staff." She's like, "Oh, the man who fucked me paid me with this. These are his. Judah, do you recognize these? This ring, these bracelets, this staff. Do these look familiar to you?" And all of a sudden, Judah doesn't want to burn her anymore. And it says, and Judah acknowledged them and said, she hath been more righteous than I, because that I gave her not to Shelah my son. And he knew her again no more. She ended up giving birth to twins, actually. And we hear a little bit about the twins, not in their adult life, just the pregnancy and a little bit of the complications. Nothing major, but then that's it. The twins are born, and then that story is completely dropped and ended. Does the actions of Judah or Tamar or God, for that matter, do any of them sound just? Do you think Tamar was righteous for getting pregnant by her father-in-law? I mean, this sounds like a BC Pornhub story. It just, but with killing at the beginning, with God killing people out the gate. Does something wicked. Kill him, even though we're never going to know what he did. Onan doesn't get his brother's wife pregnant and comes on the ground. God kills him. And then no fucking for a while. And then Tamar gets her father-in-law to fuck her and get her pregnant with twins. Judah nearly kills her in a hypocritical act, even though he has no problem with having sex with a harlot. But one of his relatives playing the harlot and getting pregnant by it. Oh no, we have to kill her. Don't kill the other whores. The whores are good for something. But, oh no, none of my relatives can be whores and get pregnant by it. She should die. She should be burned. You know what makes this even more interesting is that supposedly Jesus Christ himself was born of the tribe of Judah, a direct descendant of this motherfucker right here. I mean, I'm not saying anything against Jesus yet. We'll get there when we get there, but that's the New Testament, and this is the Old. That's a long ways from now. But what an ancestry to have. Such a hypocritical asshole. This is the same guy that suggested selling his brother into slavery. I know I've mentioned that before, but Christians have a tendency to make heroes out of hobos. Okay, hobos can be heroes. I'm sorry. I was trying to go for something that started with the same letter. They make heroes out of horrible people. Let's go with that. This is already quite a terrible guy. For not having killed anyone, he's an asshole. He's a dick. He's a hypocrite. And he is supposedly a direct descendant of Jesus Christ. Okay. I mean, whatever. As long as Christians don't try to paint him to be a holy person. And you know, it's interesting. He says that Tamar was more righteous than him. And that's debatable. I'm not going to get into whether or not Tamar was... Well, I mean, she probably was overall better than Judah. But I don't see why she couldn't have left this ridiculous family. Well, they were wealthy, so she probably didn't want to leave. From that aspect. But if she really wanted a child that badly, and, you know, she wanted a man, to be married to and all that and help raise them. She could have left and, started over somewhere else. She didn't have to stay. Maybe she felt obligated. Maybe she was well treated otherwise by the rest of the family. I don't know. I mean, she was chosen by Judah to be Er's wife. So there must be some reason for her deciding to stay and get pregnant specifically by Judah. But why? Why couldn't she go somewhere else? Everyone was more sexist back then, I understand. Maybe I don't. It is such a strange story. I don't see exactly what is right about Judah or Tamar in what they did. Judah is definitely worse, but I mean, really, playing the whore to get pregnant by your own father-in-law because your father-in-law won't or has neglected to tell his youngest son to go have sex with you and get you pregnant for your first husband or only husband, since it doesn't say. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Onan did marry Tamar. He did marry her. Officially. It was sex within marriage. But Judah doesn't get punished by God for having sex with a harlot, and he does not get punished for getting his daughter-in-law pregnant. I know you would think God wouldn't punish someone for doing something by accident, but he has. He totally has. According to the Bible. Covered it twice. And it involved Abraham. You can go back and check those out. But God punished two kings because Abraham lied to them. And the kings were in the right the whole time. They were lied to. They were tricked. But God punished them anyways. Instead of Abraham, who did all the lying and the tricking and was the only one who is actually guilty. God did not punish him. Just like God didn't punish Judah here. Tamar got her way. She got her kids. And Judah felt like a douche. At least I hope he did. Seems like he did. He admitted that it was him that got her pregnant, at least. And I'm assuming, it doesn't really say, but I am assuming here that she and her twin sons stayed and just lived among the rest of the brothers and servants and all the other people that lived there under the house of Jacob. Which is good. Judah didn't kick her out or anything. He owned up to his mistake and didn't have sex with her anymore, which is probably a good thing. Probably felt really embarrassed because everyone knew that it was him. Not only that it was him, but I don't know if he felt embarrassed regarding the aspect that everyone knew that he had been with a whore. But he was definitely embarrassed about the fact that the whore just so happened to be his daughter-in-law, that he got pregnant, and now he has to live with this woman and her kids in the same immediate vicinity. I don't know who those kids are going to call dad. I don't know if he helped raise them, since he was the one that inseminated Tamar. We don't know how responsible of a father he was about it, but that's where the story ends. So, good for Judah for owning up to his mistake, I guess you could say. But not good for Judah for being so hypocritical. It just perplexes me how Christians can take something so far like masturbation out of this one passage that just partly mentions it. And you know, Onan may not have even had to stroke his dick to come on the ground. If Christians knew anything about sex, gosh. If they knew anything about the real world when it comes to science, relationships, psychology, what is detrimental to the human mind, and what is helpful, and if they actually did their own research, looked into it, you don't have to trust what everyone tells you. In fact, you should not. You should not even trust what I'm saying. You should do your own research. You should be reading this book for yourself. See how stupid this stuff is. Try living the way Judah did. See how many people like you. He's not a great example. Try living like Jacob. Try living like Abraham. Abraham was a scammer. Isaac tried to scam people. He's not much of an example to live after. And him trying to scam someone is really the only story we have. And he failed at scamming. So even if you're trying to be a good scammer, he is still not a good example. And Abraham got caught scamming. Isaac got caught. Jacob, he scammed. Whoa. He was really good at scamming. Fortunately, Joseph is a much nicer person. And we're going to find out about how much better of a person he is. In fact, he's one of the best people in the Bible up to this point. He's better than everyone else, seemingly, so far. He's the most honorable, he's the nicest, most innocent, seemingly. And we're going to get into the rest of his story in the next episode. I hope you like, subscribe if you haven't, share my videos. Stay safe, my friends, and until next time, farewell.